Welcome to Spark Sessions. I'm your host, Sonya Locke, and this girl is on fire. Today's guest is a true guardian, a leader whose story is defined by resilience and a fierce commitment to serve. Sherri Foster's journey began on the beat of a local police officer in Winder, Georgia. Hired by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, where she worked as a narcotics and special agent, and spanned continents as a special agent and supervisory special agent with the DEA, investigating transnational crimes. After retiring from the DEA, she joined the United States Attorney's Office here in Atlanta, where she worked as a consultant. Over 4 decades, she has built an extraordinary career, grounded in courage, discipline, and heart. Today, she applies that expertise to protect thousands in the hospitality industry as Director of Safety and Security for Extended Stay America. Sherri is proof that personal trauma can become professional purpose and that true strength is found in the courage to protect the vulnerable. Sherri, I am so honored to have you here today. I mean, I know a little bit about your story, and it is mesmerizing. It is amazing. It inspires me, and all of your service. I just want to thank you so much for your service and for joining me. So cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for saying thank you. Not many people do.
Sherri, your story and, like I said, your service is remarkable. But anyway, with the fire and the passion like you, it started somewhere. And I think I read in one of your interviews that you said you chose to be a victor, not a victim. What did that moment mean to you? And tell me a little bit about your upbringing and what brought you to where you're at now.
Well, I grew up in a little town called Loganville, not too far from here. My mother was a nurse, a licensed practical nurse, but she had some mental health issues, and she was addicted to prescription drugs. And so she had a partner, but she, as a child, I tried to understand, why things were happening the way they were happening. I wasn't sure. There was abuse, physical and mental, verbal. And I will tell you, as an adult, the physical abuse, the scars go away. The verbal and psychological, and that kind of sticks with you. So at some point, I visited an aunt in Winder, Georgia, and was given the opportunity to not return home. And so I made that decision. And was there an epiphany or anything that, I can't do it? I can't say that. I just knew that if I was going to break that cycle of abuse, if I was going to ever escape, that this was the time to do it. So I was placed in a transitional foster home and social circle. And I think that's where, in my 17-year-old, or I think it was young 17-year-old head, I was so naive, but I thought, I do not want to be a victim here. This is something I don't want to go back, and I want to go forward. I knew nothing about the world or what was going to happen. But as it turned out, I got adopted by she's actually my cousin, and her husband and their 2 sons that became my family. They're phenomenal. And so it broke the cycle, at least at that moment. And then I think as I went to college and grew up, I realized that there are a lot of people that play the victim card. And it's so easy to be a victim and get trapped and say, well, yeah, this happened to me, and this is the reason I'm a drug addict, or this is the reason I, do whatever. And I decided that was just not going to be me, that I was going to be victorious, irrespective of what my life turned out to be. I would not be back where I was.
And that is so bold. How old were you when you made that decision? to basically kind of go and foster a transitional home. I mean, that's a bold, very bold decision.
Well, I think in Georgia, you're 16 is you're not a minor anymore. It may be 17 or 18 now, but at the time I was 17. It was July the 31st of 1980. I remember that I came to live with my family in Winder. When they called the foster home and said, we'd like for you to come live with us, I didn't understand. Wow, and I think children, the one thing that they want is the time with their parents and the love of their parents. I don't think it's the material things, and it definitely wasn't in my case because we were super poor. I just wanted to be loved and appreciated. And so for this family to take me in with 2 young boys and to love me was amazing. And let me say, when I was at the foster home, wow, I realized that there are people that have it so much worse than I had it. And, kids would come in that had been sexually abused by their father, their grandfather, their first foster parent. People were dropping kids off at the courthouse steps. And so the older kids, which was me, would have to take care of the younger kids. And so what that showed me was that everybody has a story. And sometimes you may think you have it really, really badly, and somebody will have it much worse. So I never say I had the worst childhood ever. It definitely wasn't a storybook childhood, but it made me strong.
Yeah.
And it made me who I am today, no doubt.
No, and look at who you are.
Yeah.
I mean, how did your upbringing, you think, shape your years of service? I mean, you have been in service for decades. How did that lead you to becoming a police officer?
I think I wish I had this great, profound moment where I said, this is what I want. I want to serve. But I was actually watching Kojak, who I love, Telly Savalas, and watching the $6 Million Man. They used to come on Sunday nights. And I'm like, I want to be a police officer. And at the time, I said, I want to be a police, As I got a little bit older, I think even in my high school yearbook, I wrote, I want to be an FBI agent. And my FBI friends would laugh because I give them such hell, now, because I was turned out to be a DEA agent. But you know what? I just wanted to help people because I realized my mother had her issues and she was limited in what she could do. And I knew I wanted to do something that would be the right thing. I think I just wanted to always seek to do the right thing, if that makes sense.
No, I think that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And you worked as a police officer, which had to be very difficult, which we'll get into that kind of a little bit next. And then you were all over the world. How did you get into like the DEA and how did that shape you think?
Well, my foster mom knew the chief of police in Winder, so I was in college. I went to Georgia Southern and started there with a criminal justice degree, and ended up with a Spanish degree because I have an affinity for languages, and so I love that. Went to Spain and studied, and then I started doing an internship with the Winder Police Department, and I loved it. I mean, I put on my uniform. I was such a badass, And then one day, one of the supervisors or SACs for GBI came to the office and they introduced me, and I said, "Oh, what do they do?" And they said, "Well, this is the Georgia Bureau of Investigation." And so I applied and I got it. And I started off as a narcotics agent at the time. I don't think they have them now, but I would go out and buy dope. I would go undercover.
Oh, wow.
And, in a time where we would never do that now. I would never advocate for anybody doing it because we didn't have a lot of surveillance, but we did a lot of good. And then shortly thereafter, I got promoted to special agent. And so I continued to work drugs because I was a Spanish speaker. And at the time, there weren't that many. I also worked homicides and I worked an incredible child molestation case for Anawake Hospital back in the 90s. I don't know if you remember, actually, excuse me, the 80s. I forget how old I am sometime, but the director of the Anawake Hospital was abusing some of the patients. And so we traveled to Mexico. And I actually did a podcast where they were asking me what drug case impacted you in your career. And I said, it wasn't a drug case. It was a child molestation case. And it brought a lot of stuff home.
Yeah.
I could relate a lot to some of the victims. And I'm a staunch, fierce protector of children.
How many victims were there of that? Do you know?
Quite a few. I don't remember. It was a phenomenal case. There was a great GBI agent assigned to it, Douglas County Sheriff's Office, because it was in Douglas County. And the director at the time was well connected in the state of Georgia. So he would take the kids to camping trips in Pachuca, Mexico, and then molest them. And he and his wife ultimately went to prison and served time. But the courage that some of the kids that came forward and gave us information, the courage that they showed, taught me a lot. It takes courage to speak up.
Yeah. What do you think was some of the biggest lessons, I guess, you learned from that? That had to be a traumatic experience, a case working like that. I just can't imagine.
Emotional. You get angry. That was one of the things I will tell you is throughout my whole career, any time I worked a case that involved a child, I really had to separate myself from my personal thoughts because I was so angry. And I knew I was angry because it had happened to me. And I didn't want it to happen to anybody else. I'm more of a protector of other people than I am myself. But I think lessons are, again, everybody has a story. You never know what someone's story might be. You never know if you're talking to someone what they went through or how you're going to impact them by what you're talking about or what lesson you're trying to give, or even if you're arresting them, you might be saving their life. It was an incredible case. We had a great team, but that probably touched me more than any case I've ever worked since then.
But I also would like to say again, thank you. Because that's really hard to put yourself into. I mean, I can only imagine the emotional toll that it did, but you are someone of service that really have done service for a community to protect others. And I want to thank you for that because not many people do that.
Thanks for saying that.
And sticking with that.
Yeah.
So with going into, I guess, the DEA, you were stationed all over. And I'm sure there was very few female Spanish-speaking agents at the time. So tell me about that and going into Peru and Colombia and all of those places.
Well, with GBI, since I was the only Spanish speaker, I was on a task force. My partner, and who's actually now my husband, we're on a what they used to call an OCDF task force, and I learned a lot of lessons because as a local police officer, a lot of the local police officers, and as a patrol officer, you develop informants, you get information, intelligence, you take it to the state level with GBI, and then the federal government we would go to for either the prosecution because prosecution was better. And so got introduced to some DEA agents and FBI agents. And I interviewed with Secret Service and at a time where they actually could tell me I was too short to see over the limousine. And then I just loved working drugs. I liked the undercover part, you could fool people, and I don't think I looked like a law enforcement officer, and I could definitely dress a part that you would never know. And drugs, I saw what it did to my mother.
Yeah.
And I know how heinous and how terrible it can rip a family apart. And so it's a mission. It really is a calling, I think, and not to sound, like a preacher or like I'm important, but I think law enforcement officers that do this don't really do it for the money, irrespective of what level they're at. They do it because it's in your blood and it's a calling and it's in your heart. And, you want to seek justice for the families or the good guys, if you will. So got on with DEA in 1990 and I went to Quantico and was the slowest runner in Quantico history, but I did it. I could do push-ups and sit-ups, but running was just not my thing. And I'm like, there is no way, heck, but I did it. Graduated and came back to Atlanta. Love Atlanta, and a lot of great cases made here. And then I realized I'm a Spanish speaker. I'm fluent. I was very good at it. Lived in Spain, studied in Segovia, and have a degree in it. And I'm like, why not use it? So I put in for Lima, Peru, and you're right. There's not a lot, more so with the DEA female Spanish speakers, but still, females make up a very small portion of law enforcement. It is a male-dominated industry.
It is.
And I got it, and so I went to Lima, and I will tell you, it's probably the best as an agent. They got to go to the jungle and carry a big gun and flying helicopters and arrest people. I mean, it was great. It was awesome. And the Peruvian people were phenomenal. And I learned so much.
And you actually have a series of books coming out as well that kind of touch on your experience and all of your, I imagine, like, you probably have a million stories, and I would love to hear all of the stories of being undercover and all those. So tell me about like your book series that you have coming out as well.
Well, my editor would kill me. Coming out, I don't know, is like in the future. But yes, I created a character that I love. And most of the cases that the books touch on are cases that I actually worked. And so, but I also use the books to talk about, mental health, bipolar, discrimination, autism, things that are very important to me and that people don't really care about. Sherri Foster talking about it, but they might care about it if a character in a book talks about it. And so I'm super excited. That's the next chapter, but yeah, no pun intended. But the first one's based in Lima, and Lima, Peru is, if you've never been there, it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. Went to Machu Picchu, and have you been there?
No. I don't like heights much, so.
yeah, it's great. The food is, I think it's actually become a culinary capital.
Wow.
Peru, and so, but you know what? I learned a lot about respect. And respecting other cultures and respecting people that were very different. If you've never lived in a foreign country or been to a foreign country, you don't really understand poverty like you do there. It's very different than it is here. And it's terrible here, don't get me wrong, but it's just a poverty that you just can't describe. But somehow the people are super happy and extremely friendly. So,
well, I have to wrap this up with one question because I think that you kind of touched on it, and it's something I always ask every guest. I mean, you've gone from police officer to GBI to DEA, now head of security in the hospitality industry, protecting all of us out there, and author. But when did you feel like your passion met your purpose? Because you were a very purposeful person.
You asked me that before. I don't know that it has, but I will tell you that the fact that I believe that protecting people, whether it's in the hospitality or on the streets or just my family, is it's a calling, and I want to protect people. I think because I wasn't protected as a child, then I think it's my job to, in turn, protect other folks.
So You have so many experiences. I mean, like just a wealth of experiences. How has that shaped your current role in hospitality as director of safety and security, one of the largest, you know, brands in America? I mean, how have you? What channel got you into hospitality, and how did your life experiences really help you be who you are today?
Well, it really was just a fluke. I got a call from my old boss called who had worked with my husband, and he wanted a strong female, somebody with common sense that had a law enforcement background. And he said, your speaking Spanish would be an asset. And I see my job. I'm not the boss. I do boss everybody around, but I do have a boss. But I see it as, again, as just as a protector. I'm fiercely loyal to the hotel brand, to ESA. I'm very protective of the staff, the associates, and it's my job to help them stay safe in whatever manner that I can do. So I think it's, I'm just wearing a different uniform, I guess. But it's the same job, it's the same calling, the same need to protect and to seek justice just in the corporate world.
So the next section, which we call the burn, is about challenges. And actually hearing some of your life story, I think that you're just like, you just live in the burn. You just like run through the fire. So I don't know where to actually start, but let's start about like starting out as in law enforcement. Less than 14% of law enforcement is women. And astoundingly, and I've got to validate this, but 18,000 agencies across the United States, of all 18,000, 40% of them have zero women. Zero women.
Wow.
How did you navigate in the toughest roles that you have taken coming in?
Yeah, I do believe that God opened doors for me that I'm still surprised that I got where I was. But when I first joined the Winder Police Department, if I'm not mistaken, there were only 2 women. There was a secretary, and then there was a road officer. And I have to tell this story. I think he was my lieutenant. He brings me in this room my first day, and I don't know if you're familiar, but back in the 80s, there was a old Dixie Mafia, and there was a guy named Billy Sunday Burt, and his MO was to throw people in wells, because, Georgia had wells back then, and a body in water is not attractive. I'm going to just say that. Not as bad as a burned body, but it's pretty damn bad. But so he had 2 or 3 books of bodies and victims. And so he said, look at these. And so he called me Missy about 3 times and had me look at the photos. And so when I got through, he said, what do you think? And I said, well, do you have any more? That didn't go over too well. But his comment to me was, there's only 2 places that, this is 1984.
Okay.
He said, there's 2 places that women belong, and neither of them are in law enforcement. And so that started my career, but I didn't care. Listen, after my childhood, pretty much everything was a walk in the park.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And I just, there's men there at that time that had their opinion, and my job was just to do a job. And so through the years, I've had people, you'll never make it in law enforcement. This is not for you. College professors, oh no, you'll never make it. And you know what, Sonya, what I really enjoy is being underestimated. Because I think when I'm underestimated is when I thrive.
Yeah.
And it's okay that they do that. So, so there have been some moments. I probably could be rich now if I took some of the comments that were said at the time and turned them into money. But I have to say that there's been more positive than negative.
That's good.
There's a lot of jerks in law enforcement. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of misogynists in every industry, as you know. But I was lucky. I also had great supervisors that believed in me, believed that I could do the job. And truly, I think that I won people over because I worked my ass off And I believed in what I was doing, had a lot of passion for the job. So I overcame those biases.
That's amazing. And what about going into, that are, going into Lima and Colombia? What type of challenges did you have to overcome, in your position going over there? Was it different or is it kind of the same?
It was different in the sense that I remember when I was interviewing to go over there, and one of the supervisors said, "Sherri, you're going to a machisto country. Latino men are very machisto and they don't like women." I'm like, okay. But I never had an issue. I never, to this day, I still get through LinkedIn or Facebook, jefa, which is boss in Spanish, or hello, Sherri, how are you, senora? I honestly believe in my heart is that if you treat people with respect and you treat them with kindness, that it doesn't matter. Yeah, there were some jerks. There was a captain of the Peruvian National Police. I will never forget. Every time I'd go to a meeting with him, it'd be me and my partner, and he'd never look at me. He would always look at the partner, and I'm like, I'm right here. I do everything I could, But those are few. And so the challenges overseas, with that are really no different than they are here. And working in the foreign arena is phenomenal, but it's the same. As a law enforcement officer, you have to use your common sense, rely on the fundamentals of investigation. Don't forget who you are. And I will tell you, one of the things that I truly tried to adhere to was not being a AAA, which is an angry and arrogant American. Because we Americans can go over and we do get a reputation, as you well know. And so when in Rome kind of thing, I tried to, adopt the Peruvian way, to learn from them, because whether you believe it or not, everybody has something they can teach you.
Yes.
So no different in law enforcement.
You have such a positive outlook. I just love it. I love your energy and your optimism that just really kind of carries you through everything, which is amazing with all the challenges that you've kind of gone through.
I mean, again, it makes you who you are, and you just appreciate, I'm an American. I'm very proud to be an American. I'm very patriotic, and I love living overseas, but I love being back in the U.S. And people will kill to come to this country.
Yeah. Yes.
And so, being over there in Lima, and then later in Colombia, and when I was in Pachuca, Mexico, and I wanted to go to Spain, but my husband had other plans. So, but anywhere you are, you just have to, let me see what they're doing. Let me learn from them. And, don't think that you're the smartest person in the room, that I can teach them so much. Think reverse, that maybe I can learn something from these folks.
So going 40 years in service
40.
to entering the corporate America, what was the hardest transition you had from that?
Language. I think I've said a few words in this podcast. I realized that F-bomb doesn't, you just have to realize that you're talking to a different audience. But honestly, hospitality is a pretty male-dominated industry too.
It is.
We have a lot of women in the field, but as you go up to the C-suites, not that many CEOs are females. I'm blessed at Extended Stay America. We have 2 women that are dynamic, and they're on our executive leadership team, but I think that's pretty rare.
Yeah, it is. I mean, in general, in corporate America, we've talked about this a lot. Actually, 9% I think it's 6% now for Fortune 500 are women CEOs.
Oh, women. Oh, wow.
So it's but yet we make over 54% of the workforce.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's changing,
yeah.
But it's a tough road to conquer.
It's so sad, because I always believed that every job I had to almost reprove myself.
Yes.
Like, yes, I'm a good agent. I got here because I'm a good agent. I never wanted to be picked for a position or promoted because I was a woman. I do not play that card. I don't play any card. I wanted to be promoted because I was very good at my job. If I was a woman, that was a plus. If I was a Spanish speaker, that was a plus. But it wasn't the primary reason why I got promoted.
So, what advice would you give someone else coming up through the ranks, whether through hospitality or law enforcement? You know, how do they overcome those challenges? What's the right path?
You know, there's not a lot of women in security in
No.
corporate America, and especially in the hospitality industry. And people ask me all the time, you know, how did you? So it's kind of a non-conventional role, but you know, I always say, follow your heart. Let your mind also have a play, because sometimes our heart will lead us down, you know, bad paths. But if there is something that you want to do, whether it's security or, you know, you think I can be a CEO, then be a CEO. There should be nothing that holds you back, because if that's what you want to do, I truly believe that if you set your mind to it, you can do it.
What's something that you really train your team that's rising up, that you're leading? What's some kind of words that you give them to help guide them on being the best at what they do?
The team, the security team that we have
Mhm.
is again, I'm not the boss, but I do boss my boss around quite a bit, and we're small but mighty. You know, it's easy for me to get frustrated. It's easy for everybody to get frustrated, but honestly, I think that when you take small steps and you see small advances, like if somebody says, hey, thank you for that drug training. Thank you for telling us about fentanyl overdoses. Thank you for telling us the indicators of human trafficking. Guess what? I think you just have to take the small victories and celebrate, and not worry about as much the 2 steps forward, 2 steps back kind of thing, because sometimes in corporate America, that's what happens. And I don't think we celebrate the victories enough.
No. And we also don't recognize sometimes that the, I guess, challenges or failures
Yeah.
are actually our greatest strength.
Yeah.
You know,
Learning.
I think that one of the things that you've said, which I think is very true about empowering people, is it's better to be wrong than to be silent.
No,
And
100%.
I think that's where you have to push, right?
Yeah. Yeah, people are, and you know, the society we live today, people are so worried about hurting someone's feelings. We don't want to, what if we call it the wrong way? But I always tell them, look, you know, if you're in good faith, think that something is going on and you don't speak up, what if you're right and that's a trafficking victim? Or what if that's a domestic violence victim? But what if you say, look, I don't know for sure, but I've been schooled, I've been trained on the indicators. I think this lady may be a victim of trafficking, or there may be something not right here. And you let your local law enforcement know, and you save her life. Imagine that feeling.
Yeah.
So all day long, there's not any police officer that I know that would say, you should have never called me, you were wrong. Because if they do, they don't need to be in the job.
Yeah. No.
They should be appreciative of, thank you for coming forward.
Yeah, you're 100% right, because like I said, if you could save one life, you know, it's worth it.
It's definitely worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Sherri, you brought up like a very important thing at the end of the last one, which was about sex trafficking, which is a problem that we do not give enough voice to. I don't even think that we can really have enough accurate statistics, because it's only a matter of who's actually been prosecuted, and it's in the shadows. And you work both sides of the system, you know, in the private sector and in protection and through federal agency. But how do we, as a society and as industries, turn protection into purpose and create industries that don't just respond to danger, but actually actively prevent it?
Right. Yeah. I think with sex trafficking, which again, you're right, it's not talked about enough. It's definitely out there. It's a very lucrative crime, but we've got to eradicate the stigma. We've got to talk about it. And you know, I had a friend of mine that mentioned something that just kind of stuck with me, and she said that years ago we didn't talk about breast cancer. And now NFL wears pink on the shoes. I mean, Delta Airlines wears pink. I mean, it's amazing what they're doing. And it's, breast, they're talking about it. I think if we communicate and talk more about this is what sex trafficking looks like, this is what labor trafficking looks like, we have to talk about it. And, I have the ability, I guess one of my, maybe working undercover, I can talk to anybody, but I can go into a hotel and say to a housekeeper, hey, if you see, an inordinate amount of condoms in a wastebasket, that's a clue. Some people can't even say the word condom. I mean, it's crazy, the restrictions that we put on ourselves. Oh, I can't say this, and years ago there was a movie, I can't remember what the movie was, but it was like the Brat Pack, and every time the mother would say something like sex, she would whisper it, That's how I feel like we do sex trafficking.
Yeah.
We don't talk about labor trafficking. Labor trafficking is huge. And so we have to get to the point where we're proactive. We're not just reactive. Like a crime happens, we respond. We have to anticipate that crime. We have to educate ourselves. We have to continuously learn. And we can do that by talking to the victims, talking to the survivors, and say, if you can, tell me what happened to you.
Yeah.
Right? So that I will know what to look for and educate our people. And, going back to what we talked about earlier, don't be silent. Speak up. Whoever invented that saying, see something, say something, is genius, because literally, there are places that have crimes committed where people just freeze and don't do anything. People were so scared to get involved or hurt somebody else's feelings. But you have to get involved. You have to be proactive. And I think that's what we don't do in any industry.
No.
Much less the hospitality industry. We're getting so much better.
Yes. Yes. I know you're very involved with the American Hotel and Lodging Association's foundation, which is on no room for trafficking.
Yes.
So tell me how that's shifting more, I guess, awareness into action and to, having that more on the forefront and what that's changing.
That is an incredible initiative. I was very, very honored that my CEO asked me to be on the committee at the very beginning when I first started with ESA almost 4 years ago. And the No Room for Trafficking initiative, one of the things I will tell you that across the industry, we're all saying the same thing. So there's some consistency. And, in the area of safety and security and trafficking, there's no competition, between the brands and, I can't talk about this because that's proprietary or whatever. Everybody has a problem. It doesn't matter if you have a high-end hotel, luxury hotel, or economy hotel. Traffickers go there. A trafficker of whatever, whether it's a drug trafficker, a human trafficker, a weapons trafficker.
Right.
Bad guys find hotels. And so AHLA, the No Room for Trafficking initiative, has been phenomenal because all the different brands get together. We have meetings and we talk about what can we do consistently to reach the guest, to reach the associates, and we're all singing from the same page. And I think that is key.
Yes.
That is key.
So is there any things that, like I said, as a guest of the hotels frequently, I travel all the time, is there things that we should be looking out for, the ways of or I guess little cues to seeing if someone needs help or anything when we're going about our travels in the airports and the hotels and
yes,
they're everywhere, but definitely those.
And especially as a woman traveling alone, I would tell you that, always keep your head on a swivel. I'm always in that protective mode. But, it's just the little things sometimes that you don't know. If you see a young lady that seems to be afraid, and people communicate with their eyes, their nonverbal cues are much stronger than their verbal cues. I mean, I would just watch out. Is there anything that looks a little odd? Because, Sonya, in your gut, sometimes you see something, something's not right. And, or somebody acting a certain way, or maybe really afraid, or you're on a plane to LA and, they don't have any luggage. I mean, little things like that are indicators. I always tell people you're not profiling people, you're looking at their behavior.
It's a good way.
And behavior, unless they are just, very well versed in deception, there are always things that will give them away. We may not see them. That's why we have to be constantly vigilant.
Right.
But bad guys are furtive. They're looking around, making sure nobody's watching them, or, there's just something, sometimes you cannot even articulate it, but call an officer or call 911 or just say, look, I don't know if I'm right.
Yeah.
Here's
And
what
I think
saw.
that there's a lot of not only empathy, but intuition that women have,
Yes.
which is where we do need more insecurity and in the police force, because, like that's one thing as well, is like looking at, like said, how many agencies don't have women. That's a very personal crime that like said, that they sometimes will not open up to a man. So it's like, I think that's another
100%.
big thing.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, in trafficking, a lot of times you can have a lot of evidence, but unless you have that victim that says, I've been trafficked. And, there are a lot of victims that don't even realize they're being trafficked. Yeah. But sometimes you have to have that person that connects with that person. I mean, that's one of the hardest things. I had a supervisor one time tell me we had an agent shot, and I was interviewing the guy the brother of the guy that shot him. And he said, Sherri, you cannot think about Ray. You cannot think about what happened. Get yourself outside of that and think, and then interview them. A lot of times when you're interviewing a child molester or someone that's harmed a child, you have to put yourself in that, well, what did that child do to, you put yourself in the mindset of that suspect. And women there is a thing called women's intuition. There is an emotional intelligence, I think, that women have that men don't have. And maybe it's the maternal instinct. Maybe it's the lioness or whatever protecting the cub. But I'm a big believer in data, and I think data is important. But you cannot take away that gut instinct and that I know something's not right. As a parent, my kids, they might think they're getting away with stuff, but there's always that I know there's something not right. And it's that same kind of gut instinct, that innate, I don't even know what the word is, but you have to trust it. Now, in order to go to court, you obviously have to also couple it with evidence, right? But in a situation where you just think, maybe I could help someone, just gut is okay.
Yeah, I liked your earlier thing. It's better to be wrong than to be silent.
100%.
Is there any systematic changes that you think should happen to help better prevent crimes like this?
Again, I go back to, we cannot hide things under, and it'll go away. We've got to talk about it. I mean, we don't talk about sex trafficking, labor trafficking enough. Fentanyl got a lot of exposure simply because of the number of deaths. Sadly, drugs have been around a long time. I mean, I started working crack cocaine in 1983, 84, 85, that time period. Communication, education, don't be afraid to speak out about it. I think that is so important, and it takes brave people to come forward and say, this is wrong.
Yeah. And collaboration, not competition.
100%.
We're all in it together to what is the bad thing. Yes. Let's get rid of that.
Yes.
I like that. Sherri, you pour so much into others. I mean, you kind of protect the world. How do you protect yourself? How do you keep your fuel burning? What are some of the things that are most important to you to keep you fighting that fight every day?
Well, I'd like to say I go to the gym and work out 2 or 3 hours, but that is a total lie. So let me start with that. I think that, I start my day with a devotion and gratitude. I think that if you've had the crazy life that I've had, you realize every day how wonderful life is and how grateful you are and how thankful you are. My faith is super strong. I don't know why he loves me, but he has brought me here. and I think that's what keeps me going. And the protection thing, I think that's just my job. That is my job. If I see somebody being wronged, I'm going to step in. I don't really care who it is. And going back to the purpose and the passion, that's a calling. I think you have your calling, and I think it's important that you do what you think you should do daily. You should be proud of yourself, not arrogantly proud, but proud that, okay, I'm following what I think I should do.
Who helps lift you up after a long day and putting all of the stresses?
My husband, he's a saint. He's a saint. He's a rock. He's a saint. He's the most low maintenance, just this incredible man I've ever met. I have so much respect for him as a person and as a man, and I love him. But he keeps me grounded. It brings me back from that edge when I'm like, about to jump. And I go back to being just grateful. I've just been given such a blessing and such a great life. So, I got to help people. I mean, it's the right thing to do, right?
Well, I definitely believe that God talks through you, for sure, because you do have a very beautiful purpose, and I think your faith probably keeps you through everything.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think this is the most important part of Spark Sessions, which is what it's all about, is passing the torch. And you have mentored young women in law enforcement and security, but what is some of, the most important, piece of advice that you can give to those women coming up? And what do you wish that, we all would be better at doing?
I think if I could, and I tell women all the time, speak up. Don't be afraid to speak up. I've been in situations where I was the only one out on the limb, and it's lonely, but I'm glad I went out there because then other people went out there. And, you see that a lot. Somebody will be afraid to come forward about a person saying something at work that's wrong. But the second they do, then somebody else, and then somebody else, and somebody else. Rape victims happens all the time. I think what we can do better as women is that, we talk about misogyny and we accuse men of being misogynist, but the truth is, I'm not sure what the word is for women, but I think we are our own worst enemies. We're catty, we're disingenuous, and if we really want to empower the next generation and teach our daughters to be strong women, we have to set an example. And I should support you, Sonya. Whatever you do, lift you up and go, you go, girl, instead of going, oh God, what does she think she can do that? So, it's hard for me to say we should blame, we can't really blame men for being misogynist when we're doing the same thing.
Right. And you hear that a lot, you know, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because
especially
there's plenty
in
of rooms at the table.
Plenty of room at the table. And, your statistic a while ago about women in law enforcement and then the C-suite. Again, it's kind of sad. And, hospitality is one of those industries where, you got to be hospitable. And women are phenomenal at that. Women are great at making people feel welcome and, hey, come into my home or whatever. And yet, they get to that level and it's like, but I think we have to look at ourselves sometimes and say, are we to blame? Can we do more as women to support someone if they're qualified, whether men or women, but with each other, we need to be better champions of each other, I think.
Do you think it's jealousy?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Listen, I'm jealous. I had a friend that I was an agent with, and I remember being so jealous of her because she was so pretty and I wasn't. And we ended up having a drink one day, and she said, Sherri, I'm just so jealous of you because you're one of the guys and everybody loves you. And I'm like, what? And this whole time I'd been jealous of her. And, again, everybody has a story. If we would just slow down and take the time to get to know people, ask the questions like, how are you? You know, what's going on? Can I help you? Is there anything that you need? I mean, we don't take that time because, God forbid, that takes away from our time.
Right. Yeah, I think that that's an important lesson for all of us. And then, like, just getting to know each other and also accepting ourselves for who we are.
Yeah. Oof.
What do you hope your
Yeah.
legacy is?
I want to be seen as a person that never played the victim card, that always tried to help people, that loved God and their family. But I guess mostly I want to be seen as a person that always sought justice in whatever form that was and for whatever cause that was at the time.
Well, again, I thank you for that because you do that. So that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, if you could give yourself one piece of advice going back to young Sherri, what would it be?
Don't marry that asshole. No, I tell you, it would be don't care about what other people think. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks but you and, you know, the good Lord.
Yes, and I think that's the wisdom that we all come to. All right, so now let's make it a little bit lighter. This is my favorite segment of Spark Session because it's super easy, and it's called the fire round. First thing that comes to mind, you shouldn't have any of the questions up ahead of time. So, okay, favorite destination you were stationed at?
Lima, Peru.
Okay. Coffee order that powers your morning?
Oh, Lord, soy latte, 3 shots, sometimes 4 if I'm really tired.
Grande or venti?
Venti.
Okay. What's your go-to reset after a long day?
My husband. Just chilling with him, whether it's just having a drink or just talking or watching the news, just him.
One thing you're unapologetically saying no to right now?
Oh, saying yes to things that I will resent later.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
If you could give your DEA self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, gosh. Save more money.
One thing every woman should stop apologizing for?
Being damn good at what they do.
I think that's true. And better feeling, closing a case or preventing a crisis?
I think closing the case, it will prevent a crisis. Like if you arrest someone and he goes to jail, that's rape someone or something. That's, you know. I think
and prevent the next one?
That's a good one. Yeah.
Okay, I want to throw another one in there. And
okay.
What is a song that gets you going, it makes you feel fired up?
Oh, Lord. I'm a Bruno Mars fan.
Oh, I love
huge
Bruno Mars.
Bruno Mars fan. So anything with Bruno Mars and I like Stevie Ray Vaughan, Pride and Joy. I love that.
Yeah, no, those are all great. You'll have to go to Vegas with me.
Yeah,
concert one time. It's the best concert.
I don't know how to gamble, but okay. Yeah.
Okay, final question that I ask everybody. Sherri, what's your final spark? What is the one truth that keeps you going every day?
Well, it's 3 parts, I guess. Never quit. Never compromise. And for God's sakes, never embarrass yourself, your family, or your country.
Those are very good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You have been such a delight. You're so authentic, and I could talk to you for hours, and I do want to hear all of your stories. They sound so wonderful.
Thank you
so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to Spark Sessions. Until next time, keep the fire burning.